I never liked playing cards. Some of my friends tried to teach me poker when I was in college, but I could never get the hang of it, so I never bothered learning which hand beats other hands, or how to play Texas Drop M, or what it's called there. It just wasn't of any interest to me. I got tired of giving away money to my ruthless friends and stopped playing altogether. My wife Kathy, however, loved playing poker and was exceptionally good at it. She played in a few local tournaments and did quite well, but she usually played with a regular group of her friends. The group met once or twice a month at the home of her friends, Larry and Sandy. They had a nice townhouse in the suburbs. Notice I said, her friends. Katie had known them since college, and Sandy was her roommate. The group consisted of Larry and Sandy, who both played poker with the group. My wife Kathy, Paul, Brian, Terry, and Mark. Present but not playing were myself, Paul's wife Mary, and Brian's wife Allison. We usually sat in the living room and watched TV. There used to be a guy named Wes who also played, but he was caught cheating and kicked out of the band. I didn't mind Katie playing, but like I said, it was her friends, not mine. Mary and Allison were okay. We were actually becoming good friends, but the rest were okay at best. I could never imagine myself interacting with any of them by choice. I didn't necessarily dislike these guys except for Mark. Mark was a complete jerk, and I frankly disliked him. Terry and Mark were lonely. Terry was quiet and unassuming and apparently not very good at poker. Mark was a complete jerk, and if I ever ran into him in public, I would probably ignore him. He was loud, obnoxious, and narcissistic. I argued with him more than once and tolerated him only because he was a member of my wife's poker group, and we only saw him when they played poker. My only real problem with the poker night was that it brought out Katie's extremely competitive side. If she loses, she will be in a bad mood the whole next day. I told her more than once that she was taking it too seriously, but she brushed it off. She's been trying to make poker night a weekly thing lately, but I really didn't want to spend that much time with these people. Luckily, Mary and Allison felt the same way, so there were no weekly poker nights, just yet. One Saturday night we were at Larry and Sandy's, and the regular band was playing. It was obviously a bad night for Katie. Every now and then, I would come over to see if she wanted something to drink, and she would always get angry. It was already quite late, past the time they usually stopped, when I heard a noise from the dining room where they were playing. As I walked in, I heard Mark say, "It was a bet. Don't dodge it." Larry followed him. "You know the rules, Kat. You don't fulfill the bet, you're out of the group." Then Katie said, Okay, let's get this over with. Now it's my turn. What's happening?" "Katie lost all her money and gave me the pleasure of the last hand," Mark said with a smile and a "fuck you" look on his face. "She lost. Now it's time to pay." "Sorry, Katie won't do this to anyone but me." "Hey guy, she made a bet and lost. These are the rules." It was then that Katie decided to begin sealing her destiny. "Henry, it's okay. I lost. I have to pay." "No, Katie, you must be faithful to me. What you want to do is pay a rate that will cheat me." Mark justified my opinion that he was dorky. "You're watching here, so it's not treason." "You know what, idiot? Keep your fucking mouth shut. Believe it or not, it's not about you." "Katie, come on. We're leaving." "Henry, I don't want to do this, but I have to. If I don't do this, I'll be kicked out. I don't care if you get kicked out. I don't care if you never play poker again." Went. I headed towards her. "Hey guys, you'll have to help me." Katie looked at Paul and Brian and tilted her head in my direction. As I moved toward Katie, Paul and Brian grabbed me from behind. I started to struggle, but Larry intervened and helped them hold me down. "Are you serious, idiots? Are you going to hold me while my wife does this in front of me?" "Listen," said Larry, "she made a bet and knew where it would lead. She doesn't want to go out, so she pays the rate." Then he laughed. "Don't worry, Mark won't last long. He really was an asshole." He stepped forward and found himself directly in front of Katie, who was on her knees. "Catherine, do this, and we'll be done." I didn't shout. I spoke very calmly, using her full name. "Stop being dramatic, Henry," she said. She began to lean forward. When she did this, I screamed very loudly. "Stop for a second." She stopped and looked at me. "I just want to be clear. Is everyone okay with this?" Silence reigned in the room. Then Mark shuffled forward again and said, "Come on, he's ruining the mood." Katie leaned forward. "Okay, that's enough. I can't look at it. Let me go and I'll leave." I had the beginning of a plan. I thought it was over between me and Katie, but I needed to get some revenge on this idiot. Katie let the end of his cock slide out of her mouth and nodded to the bastards holding me. They released me, and I calmly walked towards Katie. Approaching them, I pretended to be trying to take off my wedding ring. The fingers of the left hand were splayed, and the right hand was twisted, trying to remove the wedding ring. Katie was kneeling to my left, with a determined look on her face. Mark was standing to my right and just grinning. Approaching them, I said to Katie, "I told you that if you do this, we're finished." Now I stood next to them and looked at Katie. The fingers of my left hand were spread out, as if I was trying to remove the ring. My right hand was clenched into a fist. "You did it anyway, Catherine, and with such an idiot." After saying the word, "this," I hit Mark in the nose with the back of my right fist. He immediately raised both hands to cover his face. I immediately turned to the right and punched both hands, covering his bloody face with my left fist. His head fell back and he lost his balance. Since his jeans and boxers were around his ankles, he fell on his butt and then flat on his back. He landed on the floor between the dining table and a large antique cabinet. I was very angry and continued to improvise. Katie fell on her butt, and I was now standing at Mark's feet looking down at him. There was a dining table to my right and an antique wardrobe to my left. The table was quite large. 8 people sat comfortably on it, with 3 chairs on each side. The cabinet was huge and must have been at least 6 feet long. The base was about 30 inches high and was oak with a bunch of drawers and doors. The top half sat on the base and was another 40 inches or so higher. I grabbed the very top of the antique cabinet, knowing I couldn't knock it over, but maybe I could scare the hell out of him. The base alone must have weighed 300 pounds with everything inside, and the top half was a wooden frame with mirrored glass doors and was filled with decorative china, Hummel figurines, a few snow globes, and other things they collected. Unfortunately for Mark, Larry was never able to properly attach the top half to the bottom. When I pulled on it, the top half tipped over. While it wasn't my intention to pull the top half on Mark, I liked how it came together. When the cabinet tipped over and landed, it sounded like an explosion. Luckily for Mark, there wasn't enough space between the stand and the table for the cabinet to land on it. Instead, the bottom part remained on the stand, and the top part landed on the dining table. Unfortunately for Mark, everything that was displayed in the antique cabinet slid forward and crashed through the glass doors of the cabinet. Shards of glass and shards of glass from the doors rained down on him. Then everything inside the closet fell into shards of glass. He must have received hundreds of cuts. Fortunately for Mark, he covered his bloody face with his hands to prevent shards of glass from getting into his broken nose or eyes. Unfortunately for Mark, when he fell on his back, his shirt rode up all the way to his stomach. Since his jeans and boxers were pulled down to his ankles, everything from his upper abdomen to the middle of his shins was exposed. He immediately began bleeding heavily. All this happened in a matter of seconds. Everyone froze and looked with shocked expressions on their faces. I was in improvisation mode, so, feigning concern, I walked around the table where his head was and said loudly, "Don't touch him! Call an ambulance!" Having reached his head, I bent down so low that only he could hear me, and said, "I hope you bleed. But if not, come back to me later and we'll talk about it. Just so you know, there's damn glass everywhere. If I were you, I wouldn't move so much." Sandy came out of the kitchen with the words, "The ambulance is on the way. Estimated time of arrival is 5 minutes. Maybe call the police?" Katie and I answered at the same time. She said no, and I said, "Absolutely." Katie wasn't stupid. She knew that if the cops showed up, a report would be drawn up and statements would be taken. Larry was very angry. He said, "Dude, you tried to kill him, and you destroyed my closet. We need to call the police." Well, I didn't actually try to kill him, but I agree that you should call the police. Personally, I'd love to talk to the cops. For you three idiots to hold me down while my wife pleases another man because she lost a bet? Isn't this like sex for money? Now, I don't know if this is true or not, but I will certainly do some research. They will never believe it. Who do you think they're going to believe, Larry? Me or the guy lying here with his pants down who's not married to any of the women here? Maybe I'm wrong. Go and call them. Do what you want. Please call the police. I'll go outside and meet the ambulance. I walked around the table and walked over to Katie, who was now on her knees looking at Mark. I squatted down next to her, and this time I actually took off my wedding ring and threw it into the broken glass next to Mark's head. You know what, Catherine? I don't think I'll need this anymore. If you want, you can dig it out of glass. Wait, what is this? Katie looked at me with tears in her eyes and said, cards next to his head. What are these, extra cards? Wait, the guy you gave up on your marriage for, a cheater? What? Are you kidding me? Mark, you're a fucking asshole. I almost cheated on my husband, and you cheated? I didn't argue about almost changed and really changed. I decided that it would come later. Mark could not speak because of the glasses in his hands that covered his face. Now there was blood everywhere. Stay here, Catherine. I'll go out and meet the ambulance, I said. They should be here any minute. I'll let you know when they arrive. I walked out the front door, got into my car, and drove away. 2 blocks later, I passed an ambulance that was driving very slowly and was looking up house numbers with a spotlight. I drove past and went home. I entered the house and began to pack my things, expecting the police to show up at any moment. I grabbed a small suitcase and a couple of duffel bags and started throwing things in that I would need over the next few days. As I was zipping up my suitcase, I heard the front door open and Katie calling out to me, "Henry, where are you?" I ignored her. Henry, where are you?" I left the bedroom with 2 duffel bags and a suitcase. "Oh, here you are. Henry, what are you doing?" "Henry, you don't have to go anywhere, God, you know." Oh, I know what you will do." "Me, Mark, how about Larry and Brian, or do you draw the line at married guys?" "And you actually knelt down instead of paying in cash. By the way, how much was the bid?" "Henry, stop it. Mark was the only one I was going to do this for, no matter how big the stake. This was the principle. I didn't mean to have sex with him. Besides, you stopped me." "Did I stop you? You've already gotten down to business, haven't I?" She ignored the question and tried to change the subject. "I managed to keep them from calling the cops, and I pulled your ring out of the broken glass. I already said I don't care. I think they should call the police. Hell, I could kill him. Should I just go to the police and confess my crimes to them?" "No, Henry. Bad idea. We'll just pay for what you broke. To hell with this. I won't give them a dime. When's your next poker night?" "Only in a couple of weeks. Mark won't be invited back, so..." "Don't worry. 2 weeks will give us enough time to get over what happened. Henry, where are you going?" When she finished her sentence, I was already outside the door. When I got into the car, she was already standing at the front door and shouting something to me. I ignored her and drove away. I drove a few miles, found a motel, and got a room for the night. I turned off my phone and stared at the ceiling all night. I finally fell asleep around 5 in the morning and slept until 10. I got up, showered, then went to the front desk and paid until Wednesday. I turned the phone back on, and there must have been a dozen missed calls from Katie and another dozen from Allison and Mary. There were also a bunch of messages from Katie explaining why she had to do what she did, and it meant nothing to us. She regretted that it happened, but still tried to justify it and claimed that it was just a bet. I answered her with only one text in which I suggested forward all her messages to her mother and see how she perceives the situation. Then I turned off the phone again. I sat on a park bench for 2 hours, walked around the mall for another hour, then went and sat on another park bench for another hour. Then I went to the supermarket and bought a bunch of junk food, then went back to my motel room and spent the rest of the night eating crap and researching scams on the internet. By 10 o'clock, I was completely exhausted and fell asleep. On Monday morning, I went to work and tried to be productive. My boss once caught me staring into space and finally asked me what the problem was. When I told him that I had serious family problems, he suggested that I take at least a few days off. He told me to call on Wednesday and let me know if I needed time off for the rest of the week. By this time, it was time to call it a day anyway, so I left and decided to stop by the local bar and grill for a couple of beers and some better food than the crap I bought at the supermarket. I didn't really want to talk to anyone, so I went to the back of the restaurant and took a booth. Regardless of what I wanted, suddenly 2 figures appeared next to me, and neither of them were the waitress. "Hey, Henry, do you mind if Allison and I sit down?" I ignored them and took a sip of ice water. "Are you mad at us too? What have we done?" "Nothing. You two did absolutely nothing," I answered, in a calm, even voice. Mary and Allison sat on the other side of the booth, and Allison spoke next. "Henry, if Mary and I didn't do anything, why are you angry with us? I know you don't really like people playing poker with Katie, but I thought we were friends. I also thought we were friends, but you didn't do anything. But? Are you two seriously asking me this?" "Well, you didn't do anything," I said as sharply as I could without shouting. "I was held by your husband so that my wife could please another man without my interference." The two of you stood there in silence. What friends? At one point before she actually started, I looked around and begged for someone to help finish this, and you two said nothing. "I didn't think she'd actually do it," Mary said. "I thought it was just a stupid joke. I couldn't believe she actually started doing this," Allison said. "Now she feels terrible. She is afraid that you will send these messages to her mom. You won't, will you?" "Not yet, but I will do it if necessary. Everyone knows how bad that situation was. We talked about this after you left and the ambulance took Mark away. Larry and Sandy said they won't call the police. You'll just have to pay." "Listen to me, Mary. I won't pay anyone anything. It is my understanding that Larry and Sandy were instrumental in alleviating what had apparently become a gambling problem for Katie. Now, I don't blame them for her weakness. But Sandy stood there and watched, and Larry really helped hold me back, while Katie ruined our marriage so she wouldn't get kicked out of the fucking poker group. Henry, she's just a wreck. Please try to forgive her," Mary begged. "I'm not sure she wants forgiveness. She doesn't think she did anything wrong. I think she wants an apology from me for stopping her from paying her bet." Suddenly, Allison seemed to have an epiphany. "What if we balance the scales? What if you go out and find a girl who will please you?" I answered her very slowly and deliberately, as if I were talking to a child. "Think about it. We were in a room, presumably with our friends. Then those same friends held me back so she could pay off the bet. Now to balance the scales. I must find a woman who will give me pleasure. So, basically, I humiliate myself in front of all her friends, and she just hears that I got even. The vision of her on her knees is burned into my fucking brain. On the other hand, she may not even believe me when I say that I got even. She can just pretend I didn't do it. I can't do that. I saw it. Please, there has to be a way to end this. I hate seeing my friends suffer." "Bullshit, Mary. You don't want to see me hurt. But were you okay with how hurt I was on Saturday? You stood there while all this happened. I was in pain, but you didn't pay attention to it. Friends don't do that. We are not friends. In my opinion, these two were as guilty as anyone else. I was devising a plan for a little payback. I just had to set the hook. I have no doubt that if someone had said something, this would not have happened. You could say something to your husbands. It might have caused a fight, but it might have saved my marriage. It's time to give them some hope. I just don't know if there's a way to balance the scales, as you say. I'm not necessarily against the idea. I just don't see how. What if one of us does it?" I looked at Allison for about 10 seconds. "What if it's both of you?" "Wait. You want us to balance the scales?" Mary asked. "I can't do this. Paul will kill me if he finds out." "Of course I understand," I said sarcastically. "The man who held me while my wife cheated on me. I understand everything clearly." "I'll do it," Allison said. We both looked at her in surprise. "You're right. It's partly our fault." "I can't do this," said Mary. "And it's unfair of you to put me in this position, Henry. If Allison is willing to help, that should be enough." "No," I answered. The hook was installed. All that remained was to reel them in. Both of you are nothing. I think this is part of the negotiations. I don't want balance. I need the scales to tip in my favor. Mary sat there for about 2 minutes, thinking. The longer she did this, the more convinced I became that I could handle it. If we do this, will you forgive Katie? If you don't do this, I won't even think about it. You won't tell Paul. I won't say a word. Actually, it wasn't a lie. I wasn't going to tell him this in words. When? I have a motel room until Wednesday morning. I plan to hold out until the weekend and then decide whether to return home or find my own place. God, I can't believe this is happening, Mary said. Welcome to my world, I said sarcastically. Look, if it's that terrible for you, just forget about it. That's not the point, Henry. I like you, and you're a nice guy. If I weren't married, I'd be with you in a heartbeat, but I'm married. You're making me cheat on my husband. Mary, I'm not forcing you to do anything. I know. Okay. If it helps you get over what my husband did, then I'll do it. Either way, it's his fault. If he wasn't an ass, I wouldn't be in this situation. As for me, she could explain it any way she wanted. It would help me get back at her fucking husband, so I didn't care. Okay, meet me tomorrow evening in my room, 6 o'clock. I'll bring something to eat and some wine. Both women got up from the table and walked away, talking to each other. They looked excited about tomorrow night and didn't seem upset. Am I the only one who takes marriage vows seriously? I know what you're thinking. Here I am, a married guy planning to date 2 married women while talking about the sanctity of marriage. As for me, she cheated on me. By doing this, she insulted and humiliated me. She has already annulled our marriage. I no longer obeyed the vows. Everything was over except the paperwork. And the women I was going to meet? They and their husbands were partially responsible, so to hell with them. I'll never understand those people whose spouses cheat, but they intend to follow the sanctity of marriage rules, blah, blah, blah. What's good for the goose is my motto. I understand that she did not intend to cheat on me, but it was not difficult for her to accept deciding to do this when her precious place in the poker group was on the line. Yes, I'm an ass. Yes, she needs help with her gambling problem. The problem is that she won't get help until she hits rock bottom. Perhaps divorce is rock bottom. The next day, Tuesday, I returned to my homeland, making sure that Katie was not there, and went in to get some new things. It was difficult to walk through my house, see my life everywhere, and know that it would no longer be the same. Every time I got sentimental, I imagined her kneeling in front of Mark. The angry emotions were still strong, so I ended up not taking anything that could remind me of her. I took some of my electronics, my laptop, my iPad, my camera, some basic tools, some clothes. I decided that I would start looking for an apartment after I left and come back later for the rest of my things. I didn't really want that much. I left the house and went apartment hunting and found an inexpensive furnished 1-bedroom apartment that I could rent month after month. I can move any time after Saturday. After signing the agreement, I went to lunch and got ready to meet the girls. I went to Best Buy and bought an Apple SD card reader and a dozen SD cards. I also bought the cheapest color printer they had that printed wirelessly. Then went to a liquor store and bought a couple bottles of wine that I knew Mary and Allison liked. I went back to the motel room and stacked all my things in the room so it looks cluttered, and then set up the 35mm camera so it had a clear view of the bed. Since the room looked cluttered, the camera was not very visible. At 5:30, I ordered some appetizers from a local restaurant, and they arrived just before 6. At 6:15, there was a soft knock on the door. I looked through the peephole to make sure they were girls and not some angry husbands. I wasn't afraid of my husband at all. I just didn't want to be caught off guard again. I walked over and turned on the camera to record video. I invited the girls in and offered them wine. At first they refused, but soon decided that a little liquid courage wouldn't hurt. Girls, we shouldn't do this. We can just drink wine and eat and just hang out. You both know that I will never force you to do anything you don't want to do. I know, Henry, Allison said. You're such a nice guy. It's a shame Brian isn't as good as you. Katie really hit the jackpot. Mary and I have been talking about this since we left you yesterday. You were right. We failed you when we kept our mouths shut. Our inaction was action. I'm really sorry we did this. Yes, I appreciate it. I just would like to know what I did wrong. What the hell do you mean, what did you do wrong? Mary, I find it hard to believe that Katie made such a decision spontaneously. If she wanted to do it with me there, she should have done it earlier when I wasn't there. I would just like to know what I did wrong to make her think she could do this. Henry, I sincerely believe that nothing like this ever happened before Saturday. It's impossible to keep this a secret. It could come out. It always comes out. She didn't know how true this was. Okay, stud, Allison began. At the risk of seeming too impatient, I'll go first. Come to the bed and stand. I did what she said, and she took her place in front of me. Okay, I'll undress you. You must stand still. No hands? I want to do this myself. Mary sat down in the office chair next to the desk and smiled widely. It made me wonder if these two had done something like this before. Mary was in the perfect spot to capture us all on video. Allison unbuttoned my shirt and pulled it down so my arms were in the sleeves and sticking out at my sides. She ran her hands over my chest with a big smile on her face. She untied my shoes and made me lift my feet one by one to take them off. Then she took off my socks. She then unbuckled my belt, unbuttoned my jeans, and pulled them over my hips. After she helped me take off my jeans, she knelt in front of me. I wanted to speed up the process, but I resisted and let her do her thing. It was amazing. Brian was lucky. It didn't take long. When she realized that I was completely done, she sat on her knees and looked at me. I leaned over and kissed her gently on the forehead. Amazing, Allison. Simply amazing. Mary, you'll have to give me a few minutes to recharge the batteries.